The lamestream media wants you to think that the Earth is in trouble, that forests are being depleted. Don Baloney says, good. He has gone on record saying that trees have had it too good for too long, and trees raped my father and murdered my mother. And I want to make sure nobody else has to go through that. If elected, he will pass legislation that bans those murderous bastard trees and protects our children and American workers. I mean, really, what have trees done for you lately? Just ask yourself, do I want to be murdered by trees? If not, then vote for Don Baloney and make America treeless again. Paid for by the Commission to Kill All Trees. Hey, what's up guys? How are we doing today? Well, before we even get started, I want to remind you to go check out my last review of Parents. There's a link. Alright, well, I don't know about you, but I'm sick of winter. I mean, it hasn't even been that bad this year where I'm at, but I'm still sick of it. So let's take a look at something that has absolutely nothing to do with winter. The Crawlers. Or as it was originally known, Contamination Point 7. Yeah, those two titles aren't even close to being the same. Hey, so for the title, I was thinking Contamination Point 7? I mean, this kind of sums up what the movie's about pretty well, right? Yeah, I mean, we could. We'll put that on the table. But I was thinking maybe The Crawlers sounds a lot better, you know? Why? Why do you always do this to me, Tom? Every time. Do I just never have any good ideas? Not even one, huh? Fine. Yeah, no, you'll get your way again. The Crawlers it is. So this had a limited release in Italy in 1990, but didn't actually hit the States until it was released on video in 1993. It was directed by Fabrizio Laurenti and Joe D'Amato. So D'Amato, that's probably not how you pronounce it at all, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it. D'Amato was not actually credited as a director on this film, probably for the best for him. And Laurenti went under the pseudonym of Martin Newlin. I'm guessing that's because he knew we wouldn't trust a shifty Italian director. Also, a side note here, do you think Fabrizio became a less common name after Febreze came out? It runs for 1 hour and 31 minutes, and its plot is nothing new. You know, I mean, people from a small town are attacked by radioactive tree roots. We've seen it 100 times before. Alright, well, if you're ready to get in touch with nature, let's check out the movie that is The Crawlers Point 7. I'm still confused about the title change.
You kids, you get my goat.
We start off getting right down to business with the title card as we see this truck driving around with radioactive barrels. This continues through the credits while some ominous music plays. Then we get a total 180 on the mood when we see this bus. Here we meet Josie, played by Mary Sellers. You might recognize her from Ghost House. Here we also meet Susan, but don't get too attached, she won't be around for long. They small talk and we find out that Josie's been gone a while and may have a boyfriend. They stop so the driver can use the bathroom and then he leaves Susan behind. Maybe because her name is Susan. That's just a terrible name, you know? I mean, at least based off of one person I know, she's the worst. Just the absolute worst. Which reminds me actually, I guess a lot of people don't know about this simple test you can do, but if you ever need a quick way to find out if someone is a good person or not, just offer them some LaCroix. If they drink it, then you know they can't be trusted. Yeah, that's facts. Science, actually. This leads us to meet this old-timer who runs this gas station and has a dog. Also, Susan finds out that she's stuck there until Thursday unless she can catch a ride with somebody. Josie gets into a small town before she heads back home. So here's her mom, we'll call her Curlers, and her little brother. He's into plants and nature. Next we meet Matt, he's played by Jason Saucier. You might recognize him from Whore. No, that's what the movie's called. It's called Whore. He's eagerly waiting for Josie's phone call, but notice what he's drinking? Yeah, that's a beer can. We don't know what one. Like, could be number 1, could be number 10. And what does he do after he gets the call? Yeah, that's right, he drives. He drinks and then he drives. That's not great boyfriend material. We find out that these two used to be a thing. Cut to his dad and these guys talking about how the trees are dying, and we see this has been along. Cut to Dr. Taylor, blue shirt, played by Bubba Reeves. His other movie is China O'Brien, which to me sounds like it could be the main character out of Whore. He's telling his boss, this guy, about how he took it upon himself to check the forest for radiation, and
these results were alarming. They were shocking. Found very high levels of radioactivity.
He also says it's kind of weird because
Didn't seem to have any connection at all with the power plant.
his boss tells him that Dr. Prizzi here, played by Gabrielle Tinti, who looks like a poor man's Al Pacino to me, is going to look into it and take over for Taylor. He also reminds Taylor,
from now on, Dr. Prizzi will be responsible for this matter.
And informs him that
It is absolutely forbidden to even possess any alcoholic beverages on the premises of the plant.
Cut back to Susan. Ugh, that name. And she's able to catch a ride with Mullet McGee here. Well, I'm sure there's no chance he's a creep, right?
Sure is hot, isn't it? I bet you're hot as well.
Okay, hey, maybe that was just a slip up.
Like music?
Yeah.
I bet you like something else, don't you?
No, he's a creep. Yeah, knew it. So he pulls over and gets all rapey. Total surprise, right? But Susan is able to get away and hide in the woods. And as she's walking, we get to see a bit of her feet just to prove that she is indeed walking. We also see something is moving around on the ground as well. Well, we don't actually see it, but we hear it. And Susan dies. Well, maybe in her next life her name won't be terrible. We see Taylor in the forest with a Geiger counter. It detects radiation. The counter picks up radiation, so he marks the tree and marks it on the map. We see Taylor at a bar where he says,
Don't you think you had enough?
There are circumstances in which you cannot get enough to drink.
I mean, we've all been there, right? No? Just me and Taylor? Okay, I still don't believe you. Before Paula here picks him up. This is her only acting credit, and she's played by Jameslyn Saxton, Jaymzlinn. Also interesting is how IMDb doesn't give where she's born, which is kind of unusual. But it does say that she was 27 while filming this, and maybe it's just me, and not trying to be mean here, but she looks a little bit older than that. On their way out, we meet the sheriff, who seems like he's being voiced over.
The only customers Paula's been taking around back lately are the ones that have been too drunk to see what they're getting into.
Anyways, Taylor can't get it up, so he talks about work instead. Well, at least he's not paying her, I guess. We see something crawling again, and it spooks the old-timer's dog. The dog eventually breaks free and finds whatever it is that's crawling around, and it kills the dog. You know, I always hate when they kill the dog. I don't know why they gotta do it. So I will say they definitely saved some money shooting this by not actually showing anything attacking. So far, all we get is camera angle and sounds. Kinda feels like a cop-out. Josie and Matt go for a day trip in the woods. We see they're walking where Taylor marked the trees. And remember when you used to be able to try to impress your high school girlfriend by sitting in a stream without worrying about ruining your expensive cell phone? Matt points out the reality of the situation.
That was romantic, but damn, it was cold.
Then we get a classic guy hiding, then scaring girl prank mixed in with seeing whatever moving through the grass, and it actually works out for Matt, before they find Susan's body. Well, hopefully that's the last time I have to say that name. They tell Mr. Voiceover, but when they go to show him, the body is gone.
You kids. You get my goat.
We see that the girl has been moved to Taylor's workplace, and the boss wants to keep it quiet. Taylor tells his boss that there's irregularities with the trucks hauling the radioactive waste, but his boss doesn't want to hear it. I mean, I'm guessing because he's probably in on it, right? The trio stops by the gas station, and Matt gives a terrible description to the old-timer.
The girl come by here, young, blonde hair, real short shorts.
What? Didn't even get the hair color right? Despite that, he does tell him what he knows.
Said she was going to Seattle, and she said her name was Susan.
When she gets back home, we see that Josie isn't so mature.
Ever since I've been back, nothing's been going right.
Well, it's not my fault.
I didn't want to go to the waterfall.
We see that these two goons have been tasked with looking after Taylor, who obviously doesn't run a lot, but he is able to lose them. The old-timer gets to drinking, then decides he's going to kill whatever killed his dog. We see more grass crawling before he's taken out, and again, we don't actually see anything. The goons catch up with Taylor in a scene that lasts way too long. I mean, it's just shy of 2 minutes, but, you know, it feels like 10. But the driver does say something odd.
He's heading for the village. Catch him before he gets there.
I mean, who the hell calls cities or towns villages? Where the hell is this? Taylor hides in the forest, and we finally see a little bit of what's been killing stuff. Then the goons get what's coming to them. Actually, I don't know if they were bad guys or not. But they were wearing black suits, so that does make them seem bad. But then again, maybe they just came from a funeral. I don't know how I feel about this now. This guy is fully committed to this death scene. I love it. Get to the bar where Paula picks up Matt, but nothing happens because he explains that he's committed to Josie. And
I sort of promised myself I'd be faithful.
She also tells him about what Taylor said when he was there.
He told me I should beat it the hell out of here or I was going to wind up dead.
Turns out Taylor forgot his map at Paula's and she gives it to Matt. Taylor makes it to the sheriff and tells him what's going on, and we find out that he's in on too. Big surprise. His boss tells the sheriff to make sure he can't tell anybody about what he found. Cut to Matt and his dad or grandpa flying around in a chopper. Now, I think it's just to show us that Matt's family is rich enough to own their own chopper and that they're better than all of us. They find the old-timer's body, and his grandson, Brian, comes to see the body, but we find out that it was buried immediately. We also find out what he does for a living.
You know what the son of a bitch does? He's an investigative reporter for some big city newspaper.
Which isn't good for anybody.
Oh, Christ.
Brian, who is played by Patrick Collins, nothing else for him, goes to talk to Matt's dad, or grandpa.
Looking for Bob Knight. Do you know him? Yeah, he's my father.
Oh, okay, so it is his dad. That was bugging me. The lovebirds stop Brian before he leaves to talk about what's been happening.
We found a body in the woods yesterday.
A young woman. You want to hear about it?
Dr. Pritzi explains to the boss what he found.
Roots, actually. Yeah, what we found inside the body of the girl.
He further elaborates.
Highly radioactive, and there are cellular oddities.
And when the boss comes to check it out in person,
The cells of the fragments of these roots are growing out of bulb proportion.
and the biggest bombshell,
Kruger, these plants are carnivorous.
the others meet up to go check out their findings, and Josie decides it's a great idea to bring her brother along. They figure out part of the map.
G degrees. You don't know what that means?
Nuclear radioactivity.
You're damn right, kid.
Then they decide to go look at the old-timer's body, but they find out there's no body. Just as they leave, the sheriff and his deputy show up, and he tells him to fill in the grave. While doing so, the tree roots come along and get the deputy. Then Taylor falls in line with a well-known scientist stereotype that he can pick locks. The others go to study the dog's body, but the sheriff shows up. As they are waiting in the trailer, this happens. And just like in Parents, this could have very, very easily turned to hentai. But instead we do get a pretty good death scene with the sheriff, and it's kind of satisfying because I just really didn't like his voice. Matt drives Josie and his brother home while Brian uses his other car to go warn the townsfolk. As Josie is grabbing curlers, little idiot here decides to play with toys, even though just minutes ago...
I'm scared.
Anyways, the branches bust through the walls, and I will say the special effects with the roots are okay. Matt, apparently never having driven before, gets himself stuck in this puddle, which they show for way too long again, but it leads to the roots attacking the car. Unfortunately, Matt breaks free, but his grandma, I think that's what we landed on for her,
In his letters, he always mentioned you and your mother.
isn't so lucky. Brian doesn't have much luck either.
Hey, the woods are falling to the roof! Son of a bitch!
And for good measure, Matt's dad gets attacked too. Now, unfortunately, Matt comes and saves him, and Brian continues to warn people.
Go away or I'll shoot you.
Jesus.
Next, they're driving and they come across Taylor. He tells them what he knows.
Dumped it somewhere in the forest.
But how could they do that?
When $2 million is involved, there is no why.
Wait, was that right?
But how could they do that?
When $2 million is involved, there is no why.
Yeah, she didn't ask why, asshole. How? She asked how could they do that? If you're gonna give a smarmy answer, at least make sure it's the right smarmy answer. They discuss how radiation led to killer roots. Nobody knows how. And Taylor says, with absolutely no conviction, by the way.
The We've got to convince this madman before someone else dies.
So they go to see the boss man, and he owns up to it pretty quickly.
I have no doubts as to what is happening. The fact is, it's too late.
Then he starts in with the crazy talk.
We shouldn't have let them try it. Now they've acquired a taste for it. They're hungry for more.
But he refuses to tell them where the dump site is.
So you haven't found the site yet. Maybe there is no waste site.
And then he goes full on nutters. Man, I think maybe he's been putting in too many hours at the office. Am I right? Then he very, very slowly kills himself. And I love how nobody tries to stop him. I mean, they all had plenty of time. Then Taylor explains what they need to do.
We've got to find the source of the radioactivity so we can stop the spread of the contamination.
What? Hey, man, you need to speak up. You're practically whispering here. Brian wants to call the EPA, but everyone else wants to try and find the site because it would be faster. So Brian leaves. The townsfolk show up to help find the dump site, and clearly this guy doesn't live here. I mean, he's obviously just passing through on his way to Joshua Tree. And the search begins. And do you like looking at trees? Then strap in, you son of a bitch, because you're about to be blown away. And apparently Taylor's handheld Geiger counter works from a helicopter? I mean, I don't have enough evidence to disprove that, but I don't think that's how it would work. But it turns out they don't need it anyways. You can actually see the barrels from the sky. They set it down, and just to make sure the radiation is coming from the radioactive waste barrels, he uses the Geiger counter before getting attacked. Matt's dad doesn't even try to help him. No, it's too late for you. I gotta save myself. As he tries to leave, the roots stop him. He fires off a flare before this happens. Yes! That's awesome! Alright, let's watch that again because I want a better look at that model plane. That is shoddy. But at least they try to make up for it with a fantastic explosion. Talon shows up and starts digging. Now, mind you, they know this is a radioactive waste dump site, and they're not even wearing as much as a bandana over their face. I mean, not saying it would help, but at least you'd be trying. So this goes on for a good while. Some people get attacked and killed, and really, they kind of had it coming. I mean, if you can't not be murdered by tree roots, you might want to reevaluate your life. Just saying. And just when they give up hope, these bulldozers show up and decimate the forest. Oh, okay, it turns out it's Brian. And if you follow through with what he said, then that's the EPA with him. The Environmental Protection Agency. Just driving through and destroying all those trees. So I'll also point out that Brian had the right idea with his PPE, or personal protective equipment, but then he just takes it off to talk to them? I mean, like, he knows it's a very radioactive, unhealthy place to be, and he wore it all the way to the dump site. Dump. But then he just takes it off? Maybe he'll get double cancer for his stupidity. Also, check out this sweet scene. I like it. So I guess, oh, hey, alright, we get more of it. So I guess the idea is that they're ripping up all the roots, even though most of the deaths happen a long ways from here. Also, they don't seem too concerned about what happens to the barrels that presumably still contain radioactive waste. Then this scene comes to a very abrupt end. To us seeing Brian leaving town after all the fun. Fast forward to Christmas, where Josie is decorating the tree when Brian calls and we see that they didn't get all the trees. Movie ends. And now for some fun facts. So Fabrizio means craftsman and is currently not in the top 100 popular baby names. You know, I mean, I guess people don't like their baby to remind them of a moonlight breeze? This movie was supposed to have a theatrical release in '92, but because of money problems, it went straight to video in '93. LaCroix translates to and tastes like dirt water. I actually located the local newspaper that came out 6 years after the townsfolk found the dump site. I just have to find it here. It turns out that the actual only tree that made it was the Christmas one, but Josie ended up destroying it. Oh yeah, found it. Yeah, every last one of them. Because that's what happens when you go parading around a radioactive dump site without any sort of protection. I don't feel sorry for any of them. So if you had to put a name to someone who is just the absolute worst, you know, I mean, just downright a terrible human being, like no redeeming qualities whatsoever, just taking air away from the rest of us, what would you name them? You're right, Susan. That's the perfect name for that particular person. So, is it worth your time?
What?
Yeah, probably not. I mean, the plot is fine, I guess. And the special effects, for the most part, aren't terrible, I guess. But the acting isn't great, you know? I mean, I guess it could be a fun drinking game, like take a drink every time you see the Roots strangle someone, or every time somebody answers the wrong damn question.
But how could they do that?
When $2 million is involved, there is no why.
Use your ears, man. How? How? If you do want to watch it, I'll put a link in the description where you can check it out for free. Well, at least as of today. Alright, well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you later. You know how one person can ruin a name for you? Like, they did that on Seinfeld. Like, the guy's trying to think of how to rename Bob Odenkirk, actually. I know. Was it? No, that's the doctor one. Like, if you have someone that just grinds your gears and gets on your nerves, and their name is, say, like, Susan. And then you're just like, you know what? That's probably what all Susans are like. So after that, you just, like, assume everyone with the name Susan is kind of a jagoff.